how much money are we talking about? How much money have you seen flow into
So
Kalshi?
I think the last I checked was over like 110 million just on elections, and we launched I think around 2 weeks ago.
We are here with Luana, who is the co-founder of Kalshi, the first election prediction legal betting system ever in the US. We're so glad you're here with us.
Thank you.
I mean, it's pretty incredible. So the election prediction part of your platform only went live earlier this month. It's been pretty dramatic legal saga that I do want to get into, but what do you think this means for American citizens? What do you think this means to finally have, in a century, the first legal election prediction market? What kind of impact do you think that's going to have on the election?
I think that's a great question. I think it actually enhances democracy in a way. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of research that says that when people are putting money behind their predictions, they actually do more research, it increases voter engagement, it does all of these things. And you also get a single number, a better forecast for the election, because people are putting money behind their positions. So it's very easy to say, I think this candidate's going to win, but when you're actually backing it with real money, you get better forecasts. And it's real-time forecasts of what's going to happen with the election. It's very different from a poll, but that information can actually help us understand what's happening, help the public understand what's happening, and go from there. I think it's super exciting that after 100 years ago, you could see at the cover of the New York Times, it would be like the betting odds for the elections, these are the odds, and it's very exciting for us to be bringing this back to the US now.
So it previously was used as a metric then to predict what would happen?
Yeah, in like 1924, exactly 100 years ago, it was used very much by the news to forecast and like to give people information about what's going to happen in the election.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and I mean, even in the days and the weeks since this has been legalized, we've been hearing Elon Musk talk about it. We've been hearing J.D. Vance, Theo Vaughn, in a recent podcast talking about it, pointing to Kalshi as a really important data point for what they think is going to happen with the election. Do you think, given that already it's becoming a huge talking point for candidates, do you think that in a few years, polling as we know it will be dead and maybe a bit more irrelevant than it is now in the election?
Well, I think they're very different things. I think they answer different questions. Polls answer a question of who are people going to vote for. Markets answer a question of what's the probability that a candidate will win, right? So when you look at our market, I think it's 60-40 for Trump to win, 60% chance he win. It's the first thing. It's not a certainty, right? It doesn't say it's 100% chance that Trump's going to win. It means it's almost a coin flip, but it's slightly biased on Trump's end. And what polls do, they actually answer a different question. They're asking people who they're more likely to vote for. So you have to interpret them as very different things. And I do think that prediction markets are better than polls for a lot of different reasons. You're putting money behind your predictions. You actually can get a lot of other positive side effects. I don't think polls are going to be over, but I think that we need to understand polls as what the information they give and what the constraints and the problems it has with that. And I think the prediction market is a very powerful tool for everyone to understand. It also helps unbiased. I think there's a lot of nowadays polls that claim that someone's definitely going to win and another person's definitely going to win. And with the market, it's way less biased, and that actually helps.
And it's decentralized too, because it's not one institution that's posing a certain question, right? It's people chiming in with what they believe.
Right, and when you're putting money behind it, you basically, let's say that the market's trading at 50 cents or 50%. If you think the chances are higher, you're going to try to buy it to bring the price up because you think the price should be higher. And everything. So everyone can participate, institutions and individuals. We are a regulated exchange, so anyone from a very big company to anyone on the street can participate and back their beliefs. And we get that one single number that kind of aggregates everything and tells you the forecast for the election.
I'm curious to get your take. I've heard some experts say that they actually think it can address concerns about misinformation and disinformation because people have to sift through what they think is material and come to a conclusion. Do you think that can help with the vast amount of data that we have and helping people kind of filter through that and figure out what actually is material? Oh,
absolutely. And I think it's actually you see that in the markets now that some specific polls come out and the markets slightly move, or you see trading adjusting. And what the markets do, they aggregate all this information. The traders go and they research and they do their research, and then they come to the market and they express the research and then the position they have in the markets. And I think that's exactly right. And I think it also helps reduce polarization for the same reason that people will do more research. They're going to go and they're going to be like, well, they're saying they're definitely going to win, but is that true? Should I read this other place? And that is also another very big benefit to society that I think that nowadays is so polarized. But with increased research and everything, it will decrease that polarization.
Great. And could you also just define, because a lot of people have never heard of Kalshi, a lot of people don't even know what betting on these predictions mean. Can you just define for listeners, watchers, readers, what exactly it is that you do?
Of course. We are the first legal prediction market in the US. So basically, you can trade or bet on the outcome of any event. So the election is a great example, but we also offer markets on things like how will inflation go next year? Will a hurricane hit Florida again? And like, from a very, very broad category of things, even like culture and Oscars and all of that. So basically, you can think of a market where you're betting on the future, in future events.
And you've been operating since 2020, but it's been legally sort of a thorny and a lengthy path to actually get the election prediction part that people are very obsessed with now approved. What went into getting this approval, and why did you want to begin on this road where you're up against regulators like the CFTC trying to win them over? I can't imagine that's been an easy task.
Yeah, I think that when we started the company, I think that we were just very naive in a way, and I guess a little cocky to think that we could figure that out. And to start, when we started, prediction markets in the US was very much like not allowed, to say the minimum. It was very
Was
illegal.
any of it allowed, or
very? I guess some very
just
simple,
non-political
like
betting?
Fed interest rates, maybe.
Okay.
You know, it was very much like there was nothing like that in the U.S. And Tarek and I decided that we realized we worked in finance before. We really believe in the power of these markets and why they should exist, and not just exist, but exist in a legal and regulated way where like everyone can participate, even big industries. We really believe this should be a big market, and we wanted to do it the right way and be regulated. And we didn't think it would be that hard, I guess, to convince the government to let us do it, because we really believed in it. And we started like almost a 2.5-year journey to convince the government to let us operate as an exchange. So then that, first from beginning of 2019 to the end of 2020, we launched in 2021. But elections has always been the bigger question there, and I think it's for a lot of different reasons. I think people have, the first reaction is like, this is going to hurt democracy. I think you need to think a few levels deeper to understand that it actually helps democracy, but the first reaction is maybe gambling and all
flesh
of that.
that out for us a little bit more, because at least other exchanges have faced allegations that there's a couple of whales basically, skewing the results, and is that potentially giving people a false picture of what's going to happen. And a lot of people are alarmed by the fact that they think this is gamifying something that is very serious. So what is your response to that?
There's actually been no proof or anything that there was actually manipulation in any of these platforms. And what's good about us is that we are the only legal one that's fully regulated. So we actually know every single person trading. We only allow Americans to trade. So there's no foreign impact or foreign influence in any way in all of these things. And there's actually, even in the ones that are unregulated, crypto-based, there's actually not a lot of evidence that it is manipulation. There's a lot of different reasons people trade, right? Like people can trade because they think they have a lot of risk associated with a candidate winning, so they want to hedge their risk. You can trade because you really believe this candidate is going to win and you think it's mispriced. So not necessarily every market movement. I think it's very easy to say every market movement is manipulation when actually there's markets exist for a long time. There's reasons why people trade. And I don't think there's any reason to believe this is manipulation at all. And we're even safer than.
Well, you're regulated like Coinbase or bank, is that correct?
We're regulated like the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, so it's a little different. We are like a futures exchange, so the same way you buy like S&P futures, you come to Kalshi to buy election, technically swaps, I guess is the term of our instruments. But yes, we're I guess as legal, as regulated as it gets. I think that's that's the answer.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because some of your competitors chose to not fight for legalization here in the U.S., and they are just accessed by people who are not Americans. Do you think that is an accurate read on what's going to happen, or do you think that's essentially a different product and a different piece of information that you're getting from those exchanges?
I think it's really hard to know what's happening in these platforms. I think that the biggest benefit of being regulated is that like you actually can know what's happening and who's trading and where the money's coming from. And I think that I actually have no idea who's trading or what's happening. It might be a lot of like the same person with different account. It's just very, very hard to know. But I think it's when we made the decision to get regulated initially, and also we actually worked on getting elections for over 3 years of this. We launched the exchange, and then we launched some markets, and we started working on getting election markets. And we worked with the government for over a year before we decided to sue them. And then the lawsuit took a long time. And even after we won the lawsuit, there was another month delay. It's a very hard path. And I think a lot of startups kind of choose an easy path. But we really think long term, if in 10, 20 years, prediction markets have a chance of being that big, it's because we started the right way. We did it regulated. We did it, legally and all those things. So I think it's sometimes a harder choice to start is actually the best one long term, and I think that I really think our strategy is better here.
Something's worth doing. It's worth doing well. What were some of the main concerns that the government articulated in their arguments to prevent you from offering this service?
I think the main there's a lot of different ones. I think the first one is that it's gambling and that there's no economic purpose behind this. So I think that's obviously a bad argument because the elections impact so much. Right, like immigration and taxes and tariffs and all those things are super impacted by the elections, and there's people with actual risk associated to it. So just calling it gambling, I think it's wrong. And they claim that like election betting might be illegal in some states, but again, that doesn't work because we're a futures exchange. And then they also claim it's against public interest because people are going to change their vote because they put money in this candidate, they're going to change their vote, And that's also all of these things there's very lengthy research to prove that actually doesn't happen because election trading has actually been legal in the UK and Ireland and Australia, Canada.
And why was it banned 100 years ago?
I don't actually know. I think it was kind of bundled in like Great Depression type of things that they were trying to do that, but I don't actually know the details. But you have research from these markets in very big countries, big democracies, and nothing bad ever happened. It's actually. And then it's very, if you have all these years of data, you should look at the data to make a decision and not just say, well, this could happen. Well, it didn't happen. We have data to prove it didn't happen. And I think that all the judges' decisions kind of lined up with what we are. I think we were always sure we were 100% right. And I think now after 4 judges having looked at this point, I think we're just even more convinced.
Yeah, certainly. No, you've been tested very heavily. Well, it seems like the floodgates were opened at the beginning of the month when you guys began offering the service. And I know the numbers are changing so rapidly that probably by the time this video goes live, it might be totally different. But how much money are we talking about? How much money have you seen flow into
so
Kalshi?
I think the last I checked was over like 110 million just on elections. And we launched, I think, around 2 weeks ago. And we really expect that to ramp up by the election. So yeah, it's a very big market. We're getting like a lot of signups as well, just like new traders, like hundreds of thousands new people coming in. It's a very big market. I think it's great that we were able to launch before the election. We really focused on that to get this season. But yeah.
And so how does it work? So if I have $1 and I want to bet that Kamala Harris is going to win, how do I proceed with betting on this election?
Yeah,
and
that's
how much
a great
money
question.
do I stand to gain?
That is a great question. You can trade for the website or the app. I think most people are signing up for the app. So basically you sign up and there's the whole KYC process you need to go through. So name, address, social security number, all those things. Financial, we're regulated, we need this information. Then you deposit money and you can say like, I want to put $10 into Kamala or Trump. And at this point, I think the odds, the last I checked, were like 60% for Trump or 40% for Kamala. So basically what it means is like that if you put 60 cents, you get $1 for Trump to win. So basically you make that 40 cents of profit on so the odds are like 6 to 4.
So whoever loses the bet pays you.
Right, exactly. So what we do as an exchange is we match the two people, right? There's someone on the other side saying, I want to buy Kamala for 40 cents. And you say, I want to buy Trump for 60 cents. So then we match you and we take the money and we leave this money segregated. We're also clearinghouse, so we save the money, and then when the election happens and there's a winner, we allocate the money to whoever wins. So the money is fully safe at every point in time, and from there.
Wow. And obviously, there's going to be questions. I mean, people might not be getting their money anytime soon, depending on whether they win or not, just because there are questions about the certification, when that can actually happen. Is the Supreme Court going to get? There's a lot of chaos.
Right.
But explain how I understand you've kind of built all of those considerations.
Yes. So the way that we actually settle the market to who is going to be inaugurated.
Oh,
so
okay.
it doesn't really matter what happens before. We were very worried about this specific thing because what even counts as winning? What if there are recounts and and their Supreme Court
popular
gets
vote may be different than the electoral college.
Exactly,
yeah.
and if you want to, we all know what happened in previous elections that we're very concerned, and I think that we actually had a team of lawyers, election lawyers, help us draft the rules. And right now, the way that it is that whoever is inaugurated or a person from the same party. So if there's any emergency or any problem. For example, Trump or Kamala are not to be inaugurated, but their VP is, that would still settle for them to win.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But it's settled on the inauguration. So whoever is inaugurated, the next president to be inaugurated because of these elections, is who's going to get the money.
I mean, how long did it take to consider all those permutations?
Oh, wow. We've been working on this. We've been working on this market, I think, for almost 3 years. And this specific formulation, I think it was just like the past 2 to 3 months. We've just been focusing on that, on the markets team. It's just all of that.
Wow, that's fascinating. And you mentioned both institutions and individuals can bet on this. And I understand Susquehanna is a backer. So are you seeing mostly hedge funds or mostly individuals placing bets so far?
We actually seeing a wide range we have a lot of institutions onboarding. Obviously, if you're institution onboarding, it's a longer process because we need to check who is the owner, all of those things. Yeah. KYC for businesses is a little bit more complicated. But we actually are seeing very spread from even individuals trading a lot of money, from institutions trading a lot of money, to we have people trading $5 and everything like that. But yeah, so it's not just one or just the other. It's very spread.
And when you talk about the spread of Trump 60, Kamala 40, what information goes into that number? Is the number of people who are betting, is that reflected, or is it just the sheer amount of money that's bet on one individual, or what can we ascertain or learn from that data that's being presented on Kalshi?
Yeah, that data is just the price. So basically, it doesn't matter how many people are trading. It doesn't matter anything else. The only thing that matters is the price that people are paying. So for example, right now, if there are people trying to buy Trump for, 59 cents, and then trying to buy Kamala for another price. Whenever there's a trade, they agree on a price, right? So if I'm trading with you and I'm saying I want Trump for 60, you want Kamala for 40, that price that we agree to is the last traded price, and that kind of becomes the this point forecast. And then there's the next trade that happens, maybe 2 other people or me with someone else, trade again, and there's another point, and then maybe that's 61, and then it goes up and down. But the way that it's 100% how the functioning of a market works. Is basically how the stock market works, right? It's people are buying up or buying down. It doesn't matter who is there or anything. It's just the price that people are agreeing to pay and the different quantities. So I think that's actually one of the very interesting things. If you have more conviction, you can just put more money behind it because you think you're going to stand to gain more, and they kind of gets the market going. So it's not like everyone gets one vote. But if I'm more informed than you are, and I could only count one, it wouldn't be a very efficient way.
Okay, interesting. What is the average bet that's being placed?
If I were to guess, I'd probably say the median is probably around a couple $100. The average is definitely a lot higher because we have those bigger institutions and bigger individuals trading a lot more money.
So do you think that this, and the first time I had learned about prediction markets is in light of the election and hearing about it on TV and reading about it, because it is a data point that's used. But it seems and we've spoken about so many different applications. Do you think that this could kind of be the next stock market that people put their money in, just like they buy the S&P or the NASDAQ? Is this how you plan to market Kalshi as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think the elections is amazing. It's kind of like the poster child of prediction markets, of what everyone first hears about it and gets excited about it. But prediction markets can be used for everything. And I think that one of the reasons we started the company is that we believe that having this forecast and having a market on everything that normal people know about and that impact the future are very important. And I think it's actually, one of the things that I love always remember it was when Omicron started picking up with COVID. We actually had a market on whether it was going to be a new variant of concern. And our market started picking up and saying that it was going to happen way before even the news started talking about it. And we say the market started going up. And we're like, wow, okay, maybe we should cancel Thanksgiving trips and all of this because it's picking up. And the same thing happened with inflation as well. It was when inflation started picking up, our markets were actually telling the story that inflation was going to pick up way before a lot of people were saying that it's transitory and all of those things, and the markets were actually telling a very different story. And I think that this tool can be used and will be used for the future. And I think that the elections are a great marketing event almost for us to get a lot of people and educate them on the value of these markets. And I think that in the next couple of years, this will all just grow more and more, and we'll see more and more applications of it. Our goal is to be the stock market, but for events, and I think it's just there are way more events in the world than there are stocks, so hopefully we're bigger than that, bigger than the stock market even, but it takes a long time to build something at this size.
And I do want to ask, because you have some pretty notable investors who've bet on you. How did you attract them? How did you get that kind of caliber of both institution and individual? I think Charles Schwab, Henry Kravis, if that's correct. Yeah, Susquehanna.
Right.
Have all backed you.
Well, we started the company actually going through Y Combinator, and I think that was we were just 2 kids out of college, so that really helped, I guess, us get started to go from there. I think Sequoia specifically, actually Alfred, who's on our board and the partner of Sequoia that invested in us, his PhD thesis, I think, was on prediction markets. So he has been waiting for a company, and we had just gotten regulated at the first time when he decided to come in. And I think it was very similar for a lot of other investors. I think they saw the potential that this market has, but the regulation was always kind of a big thing. It's like, well, it's never been legal before, how are you going to figure this out? It's just 2 kids. And I think that once we actually got regulated, people were like, okay, they're not kidding. They're gonna actually try to build this into a real business, because I think people don't expect a lot of 22-year-olds to be 2 years without building anything, just talking to regulators. But we were so passionate about it that it worked out. And I think nowadays, obviously, with more traction and everything that we're getting, I think we just get people that are not just bought in on the mission, but also now we have data to back it up.
We are here with Tarek Mansour, who is co-founder and CEO of Kalshi. This has been a crazy month for you guys, and this is the first time in a century that election predictions are legal in the US. What do you think that means for the election, and what impact will that have on people's voting decisions as they go to the polls?
Well, yeah, first of all, we won the lawsuit against the US government. It's been a very long process to get here. As you said, so 100 years ago, election betting or trading was made illegal. Now it's back to being legal in the US. What it means is, I think, 2 things. People can now participate and engage a bit more meaningfully with the election. People have had this sort of a feel of I don't have control of who wins, and I'm just gonna take the impact and the consequence no matter what it is. And now you can actually do something about it. You can make money off of it if you have a conviction about who is gonna win, or you can hedge against an outcome that is negative for you. Which I think is a very powerful thing. The second thing, and I think this is a big topic of conversation right now, is these markets are a mechanism for truth. There's been a lot of misinformation in the last 10 years, and it's rampant. It's actually getting worse and worse. Polls are getting less and less accurate. We don't really know what the future holds, and these markets are it's actually the best mechanism to get more truth about who's actually going to win.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Elon Musk, who of course gave you guys a shout out over the weekend, has talked a lot about how he thinks X is an opportunity to create free speech, create a public square. In a way, it seems like what you're doing with Kalshi is a similar service. You're giving people access to information in real time. Do you think you feel similarly about Elon? Do you think you feel the same way that Elon Musk does by creating this kind of service that gives people more information?
Well, separately, I think Elon is a legend, so that's a separate thing. But whether I agree with his mission or not, I think so. I mean, I think more truth is a good thing. I think it's hard to kind of debate that. I think it's slightly separate approaches. I think X has this sort of town hall feel where people can just come and debate about whatever they want to without any filters. I kind of like that, actually. We have a different approach. We're using a market-based mechanism. We're letting the market speak instead of pundits, pollsters, political figures, people with biases or conflicts of interest, people with hidden incentives or not. Markets don't lie. just ask people to put money where their mouth is, have some skin in the game, and when they do, they stop lying. It becomes unbiased, it becomes more truthful, and I think that's our approach to basically delivering more truth to the world.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious too, because it seems like this is something now that's cited just as much, if not more, than polls in some cases. JD Vance, Theo Von, we're talking about it on the podcast, mentioned Kalshi.
Yeah.
Specifically, they clearly are of the mind that this provides more information than a poll does.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a few things here. Like, first of all, I don't know why people have to sort of create a competition between everything in some ways. Like, I mean, polls don't need to become obsolete. It's not markets versus polls. It can be markets and polls. Markets and polls do different things. Markets are pricing the probability of something happening. Polls are asking people who they're going to vote for, and they're not exactly the same. I think actually the presence of these markets, what it's going to do over time is going to push polls to get better. Mm-hmm. Become less biased, become more truthful, push them to do better sampling of people. And so the way I see it is like actually, what I tell people is markets should, in theory, and are in general better than polls because of all the things I said. Because you're aggregating the crowd wisdom, plus you have skin in the game. Whereas in polls, if you're wrong, there's no consequence. In markets, if you're wrong, you lose money. People don't like losing money. But regardless, what I tell people is like, you can look at both. I mean, and people are looking at both. If you go to RCP, you look at the market-based forecasts like Kalshi, and then you look at a bunch of polls all next to each other, and you can make your own informed decision on which one you want to trust more. So yeah, I think it doesn't necessarily need to replace polls. I think it just, they'll both push each other to become better and more accurate over time.
Interesting. Yeah, it seems like at least one of your competitors hired Nate Silver, who's a notable pollster. Do you see more of an integration then of the two? And do you think you would bring on pollsters and try and make this sort of a 360 operation?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know if we have any plans for that right now. But yeah, I mean, I don't see kind of any conflictual relationship with polls. I think markets and polls and other ways to forecast can build off of each other and get better over time. I know some of our traders look at polls when they're making their trades, and I know that, and that sort of makes the market more accurate. And so, yeah, I think in some ways there will be more integration over time. But I think the most important thing for us is like we are focused, and that's been our approach from the start. We have two beliefs. Like one, these markets are going to be very large. They're going to be the next step of financial markets. And two, financial markets need to be done in trusted, robust, regulated way. And that's why Kalshi from the start, we were regulated up front, trust up front, make sure customer funds are safe, because we want people to trust these markets over time.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that there are no issues over the next few weeks.
And regulation is key to that. Is there other information that you try and disclose or share with people who are using the service to enhance that trust?
Our API, our data is publicly available and it's open source on the API, so we don't charge for it, even though we could. We're making it free and open source, so anyone can pull the data and look at the trades over time, where the money is flowing, how much is being traded and bet on Trump versus how much is being traded and bet on Kamala. And I know there's been a lot of claims in the press. I can't talk about unregulated offshore competitors. There we don't know who's trading and who's doing what, whereas on Kalshi we know who it is. It's like opening a brokerage account. They have to give us their SSN, their names, etc. But on Kalshi, it's important. People have been saying, oh, maybe it's a few large accounts, whales, that are pushing Trump's odds up. And that we have released data to show that this is not actually true. So a few things, like the average bet size is slightly larger on Kamala than it is on Trump. So it's not actually a few large accounts that are moving Trump up. It's just not true. And two, the other really interesting thing is actually, out of the female population that is trading on Kalshi and is betting, slightly higher percentage is actually favoring Trump versus Kamala. So all these claims about like biases, gender, age, also, and so on and so forth are not really true. That's
really interesting that you have access to the demographic info. Are there other things like that that have surprised you as you've looked at some of the numbers? No, I think some of the main ones. I mean, you have geography info. We're actually probably going to release that soon, of which states are actually leaning where harder. And then we have age. Obviously, we have less old people than young people, but there's also absolutely no difference on the percentage of young people versus old people that are basically betting Kamala versus Trump. It's very consistent across the board. That's fascinating. And I want to get to your own background too, because you've had an interesting journey kind of understanding politics, hedging, the markets. You spent your entire career working on this. I understand you were at Goldman in 2016. So tell us a little bit about your evolution and how you decided to end up here, making this at this moment, your life's work, essentially. Yeah, so Luana and I both went to MIT. We met there when we were both, when we were both freshmen, and then we both kind of really enjoyed
like math and tech, but we also really enjoyed markets. She spent time at Bridgewater and Citadel. I spent time at Goldman and Citadel, and we've kind of observed how a lot of the kind of trading activity from a lot of these markets actually stems from an opinion about a future event. And so that has created, this kind of really made us think about this idea of like, why are we using stocks and bonds and options to bet or hedge against something like Trump winning the 2016 election, or Brexit, or the weather, or inflation going up, and so on and so forth. And so there could be an easier way where you can create a financial instrument where what you're buying is the event. Mm-hmm. Yes, Trump is going to win. Yes, Kamala is going to win. Brexit will happen. Brexit won't happen. And so that was really the genesis of the idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. And you think this is perhaps a more efficient tool to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very simple. Like if you had a view that COVID is going to get better a few years ago, what you would do is maybe buy like a Marriott stock because hospitality was going to go up. But sometimes you might be right, COVID does get better, but then the CEO gets fired and you lose money. So you're right and you lose money. That felt like a very inefficient and poor way of doing it. It's like, if you think COVID is going to get better, how about you buy an event contract? So you buy a prediction market on, will COVID get better? It feels like a much cleaner. So in that case, if you're right, you're always going to make money. You're not going to lose. And so that was really kind of why we think this is a more direct, more precise way to get someone's opinion rather than the traditional financial instruments.
Why do you think there was such a hesitancy and it was such an uphill battle for you to get this approved? What do you think the main concerns were?
I think with financial markets has been consistently true that any new type of financial innovation brings scrutiny. It's always been true. I mean, it's not just for prediction markets. It's been the case for crypto. It's been the case for credit default swaps when they came, like all the types of interest rate swaps when they came at the beginning of the millennium. But also, if you go back, historically, like people forget. I mean, well, they don't forget; they weren't even born, but they don't know that, like in 1905, for example, like grain futures had this whole debate of whether this is gambling and this is useful for society, and they were actually going to get banned, and then the Supreme Court decision legalized them. So, this notion of our financial instruments gambling, there's always that sort of pull and push and pull for these types of new instruments. And so it's nothing new, I think. Regulators are cautious, and that's fine. Innovators have to basically push through, and some innovators are more aggressive than others. I think we're on the aggressive side, but for us, it's always regulated and safe up front. So we never did anything kind of below board. Everything's above board, and if the government doesn't let us do something, we're like, okay, well, let's take it up to the courts and see who's right on the law. And we were right on the law, and so now we're doing it legally.